Hey team, if you're still doing HIIT and wondering why your body's not changing or you're not building muscle, maybe you're still skipping leg day because you jog a little bit. So I wrote about this the other day, and if you're over 40 and want to stay strong, lean, and make sure you have a quality of life in years to come, there are 7 myths holding you back. So I'm Gavin Walsh, health and fitness coach for business leaders over 40 who want to be strong and lean without turning their life upside down. So taking into consideration family life and their schedule. Now, as I mentioned, I wrote about this the other day on LinkedIn, and there are 7 muscle myths, I would say, that are still floating around in gyms, boardrooms, maybe on WhatsApp chats. So let's get into it. Number one, I don't want to look like a bodybuilder. So I hear this time and time again. I speak to various people throughout the months, and this thing pops up time and time again. We get a lot of people who are in one camp or another. They're all in on cardio, mobility, or strength work. And the people that don't do strength work, for some reason, assume they're going to end up like a bodybuilder as soon as they start to pick up some weights. And that just won't happen. So lifting weights a few times a week will not turn you into a bodybuilder. It takes years and quite often some chemical enhancement to get into that shape. You can get in very good shape just lifting weights, but putting on bulk does not happen overnight and certainly not by accidents. So if you want to be strong, lean, and actually look better in your suits, doing some weights, and maybe initially it would be body weight, and then maybe some bands or some dumbbells, and then into the gym. But there's usually a stepping stone. You don't go to lifting really heavy weights really quickly. So, as I said, it doesn't happen by accident, and it takes a fair bit of time to build up that level of muscle. But you can get a decent amount of muscle, especially if you're a beginner, in the first 8 to 12 weeks. And then it's a case of keeping pushing. And to a point, you get to a maintenance level. You look in the mirror, how you feel, how you look, and you decide when you want to maintain. If you want to keep pushing and pushing and pushing, then by all means do. But then you need a calorie surplus to make sure that you actually add even more muscle. But that's another story for another day. Myth number two, I do HIIT. But that uses weights, right? Yes, and HIIT can be good. It's sweaty, it's fast, it feels productive. And you may have done it your 20s, 30s, and got reasonably good results from it. But now times have changed. You're in your 40s as family, your schedule perhaps is busier, got a lot going on team-wise, maybe running a company. So your schedule is very different, and you're looking to try and get the biggest return on your investment, especially in terms of time. So lifting a dumbbell between burpees, it's going to burn calories. It's good for your heart. It's good for your maybe your overall health, but it's not proper strength training. And to build muscle, you need rest between sets. You need progressive overload. You need enough weight, enough of a stimulus to actually challenge your muscles for them to say, oh, okay, we're getting serious here. We need to build more muscle. And if you are breathing hard, then there's a good chance that you're not going to be able to lift as much as you would be able to if you weren't breathing hard. So the HIIT stuff gets that heart rate up, and it's going to help you burn more calories perhaps, but this is a big but. It only burns calories during it and maybe a smidge more after. It might elevate your metabolism just slightly for an hour or so. But I found, and many of my clients have found, you will get better results focusing on the strength work. And if you have time, then throw in something like HIIT or a run for the heart health for your lungs. But in terms of adding some muscle, creating a better metabolic engine, and having that quality of life for years to come, then the strength training is where you go. So make sure that you've got adequate rest and you are pushing yourself when you're lifting these weights. Okay. I'll get onto some of this in a little bit as well. So next thing, and I heard this the other day. Someone mentioned this in a LinkedIn post, and I was like, this is not on. So they were saying that they were struggling to lose more weight, and they were swimming. And they said, okay, I'm building enough muscle because someone mentioned that muscle helps. And it does. But they were saying, oh, I'm building enough muscle through swimming. Now, swimming is brilliant for your heart. and your joints, and if you're overweight, perhaps. It's relaxing, meditative, therapeutic maybe. But unless you're a total beginner, it is not building muscle. So even those Olympic swimmers that you admire so much, when they're not in the pool, guess where they are? They're in the gym. So I would go as far as saying most elite athletes that are in good shape, they are doing some gym work. So we can't just take on face value, oh, swimming, they've got great physiques. That's what I want to look like. They're also in the gym. Now, next one. I run so I don't need to train legs. Now, running's great, similar to swimming. Great for your lungs, great for your heart, good for your headspace. Brilliant. But somewhere along the lines, people start to think, okay, well, I run, so I've got strong legs. Now, running can build endurance, and you might be absolutely fine banging out 100 bodyweight squats. But just because you jog 10K, maybe you've run half a marathon, it doesn't mean you've got strong legs. Because go and grab two 30-kilogram dumbbells and try set of lunges. Let's see how you get on with that. Let's test that leg strength. Have you actually got a decent pair of legs on you that are strong, and have they got any muscle on? Because when we look at putting muscle on the body, it's to help overall metabolism. And a lot of people are missing a trick, especially guys that just do their top half, are missing a trick because your leg muscles are very big muscles, and it's going to help elevate your metabolism. It wasn't until I started taking my leg work seriously that my abs started coming through as well. So take note of that. And if you want fewer knee issues, better glutes and that faster metabolism as you age, you need to train legs properly. Start taking them seriously. So whether you're doing full body sessions, whether you're doing some other type of split, whether it's push, pull legs, you've got to have some legs in there. So if you're doing full body, which tends to be what a lot of guys are that don't do weights very seriously, they would do full body, but make sure you get some legs in there. And maybe you'll advance to something like push, pull legs, or even more of a split where I won't go into that right now, but there are other splits you can go into where you target certain muscle groups on certain days. Now, next one, I do planks, crunches, and I'm doing that to lose belly fat. Well, you should know this by now, hopefully, but it is still knocking around. I still get one or two people ask me this every few months. What can I do to lose more belly fat? Is there an exercise that I can do? And people think that because they can feel it around the midriff, planks, crunches will do that. And that's not the case. We can't spot reduce. And so there is no one exercise that's going to help. So if you want to lose belly fat, it starts with nutrition. You know this. There's no shortcut to it. But once you've got your nutrition in a good place and you're getting relatively lean, you can start to really focus on trying to get your abs stronger. And same goes for abs as bicep curls, for example. Now, would you do a bicep curl without any weight? Would you do hundreds of them? No, because it's not going to help your biceps get bigger. But people tend to do this with abs. They think, okay, I'll just do lots and lots of crunches, 100 crunches a day, for example. So if we want the abs to grow, we need to add more resistance into play. And my top three ab moves, not necessarily core moves, because there's lots of spinning moves where we're trying to get that rotational movement in there, which is definitely helpful later in life. But if you're just looking at purely abs, I would say dumbbell pullovers with leg raises. So it's a bit of a hybrid move. So bringing those legs up, hanging leg raises. Again, anything that brings the legs up gets those bottom abs going, which often people are missing. And then cable crunches. You can look into those exercises if you need to take notes. So it's dumbbell pullovers with leg raises. So adding a bit of resistance with the weight overhead. Hanging leg raises, your legs are that resistance, and you can do them in a dip machine where you lock in your arms and then you lift your legs up. Bent knees or straight legs. Bent knees maybe initially, but then transitioning it into straight leg, and then the cable crunches. So you have a rope or a universal attachment down behind your shoulders, you're holding onto it, and then you would lean forward with the cable, and obviously you're doing this kneeling. So go check them out if you want to, or shoot me a message if you want to know more about those. But if you do these, you eat better, get rid of the 100 crunches, and you'll actually get somewhere. And it's not impossible. I know a lot of people say, well, I don't want abs. I'm over 40, I'm too old for that. You're only too old for that until, well, part of it is you've given yourself a ceiling. You're like, okay, I can't achieve that. It's too difficult. And it's actually not. Once you start to see progress, and then you get to a point where actually I'm quite lean now. I'm starting to see the top abs, and it's just a case of how far do you want to push? Because for me, it's relatively easy to maintain that. So I'm probably around about 10, 12% body fat. Once you get to about 15% body fat, that's when you start to see your abs coming out, especially for guys, maybe a little bit higher for women. But you see those top two abs first, and then the next two, and then the bottom two. So it depends on how far you want to take your diet, and it will take time. You've got to be patient with this, okay? But moving on from there, okay, I mentioned this a second ago. I'm too old to build muscle. Some people think, oh, well, I'm past that now. I don't want to be in the gym. And part of it's ego, if we're honest. A lot of guys I work with, they're executives, quite well, high flyers, you might say. So they've done very well in their career, and going into the gym, it's humbling, especially if they're not too sure what they should be doing, and they'd rather avoid that than get stuck in, which is the wrong mindset. And so a lot of the guys I train will start training at home, build that confidence, maybe get some weights, a bench, and then if they feel they need to, if they haven't got enough space or enough weights at home, my wife is not a fan of all my kit at home, so I go to a gym, I get in there early, but obviously access to heavier weights is one of the key things you need to consider. And there's a stepping stone, as I mentioned earlier. So you don't necessarily jump straight into using heavy weights. You build up, build that confidence, and then you take it from there. So that allows you to put that ego to the side for a moment and then build that up. But muscle declines pretty much from when you hit the age 30 and accelerates unless you train. So if your arms are starting to look like noodles, and I see this in a lot of older gentlemen, even if they've got a bit of a belly on them, the arms are very thin. Okay. And that's a sign that you need to do something about it. And obviously, you will see this with people at the moment with Ozempic. They've got noodle arms. Okay, so they lose a lot of muscle as well with this. And again, that's a video for another time. But anyone who's doing Ozempic, they might lose fat, but they'll also lose muscle at the same time. So you see these people that lose a lot of weight, but also lose muscle in their arms. But anyway, the good news is you can still build strength at any age. You can still add muscle at any age. Might be a little bit slower than it was in your 20s or 30s, but it can definitely be done. And it's definitely worthwhile because it's all about that quality of life. So you need to train smart and be consistent with it. And when I talk about being consistent, I've written about this many times. And something I do is train in the morning because it allows me to be consistent. I can reliably do my workouts without family or work hijacking that time. So something to think about. Don't necessarily have to join the 5 a.m. club, but you need to find a time where you can be consistent 3, 4 times a week, block out that time, nothing gets in the way. That is in the diary. It's done. Okay. No negotiating with yourself or anyone else. Okay. Next one. I'm already going to the gym. And this is great. I know it's definitely better than a lot of people. So if whether you're doing HIIT, whether you're going to the gym, you're doing classes, great stuff. Fantastic. But turning it up is just the first step, really. It's half the battle because it's what you do there that matters. So wandering from machine to machine with no real plan, that's not training. That's just showing up and hoping for the best. There's no strategy there. So if we were to put that strategy into business, just like, oh, I'll do a bit of this, do a bit of that, then obviously the business is not going to thrive. So we need to get you a plan, some structure, and track what you're doing over time, the exercises, the reps, the sets, so you can get stronger, you can add muscle, you're making sure you're giving your muscle a bit of a stimulus there, enough of a stimulus to grow. And while the HIIT classes are good to start with, the even body pump is a good starting place. You can learn some technique there, but eventually you need to graduate. So you're using heavier weights, you're pushing yourself, and I would say minimum 3 times a week, four ideally, but it depends on what your goals are. I get some clients who love their cycling, they might love to run, they might love their tennis or something along those lines. And so maybe 3 times a week plus some sports or anything else you might like to do. And you can change it depending on the time of the year. You can turn the strength training up and turn the cardio down, mobility up. Depends on what your goals are, but strength training should always be a part of your weekly routine. Um, Two, I would say, is your minimum, your bare minimum before things start to take a nosedive. Okay. So again, we need progressive overload. We need that rest. If you don't need rest, there's a good chance you weren't lifting heavy enough in the first place, and you need repeatable results. And so you need to track things so you can see that you are getting better, and then you can look back each week and think, okay, that's the weight I did then. All right, I need to bump that back up. Otherwise, you're just moving. And something that I often see is people doing weights, but with fairly light weights. As I mentioned, body pump and the Peloton classes that do weights as well kind of falls into a trap of just doing cardio with weights because the weights aren't enough of a stimulus. And plus, when you, as I mentioned, you start throwing burpees in or you're hopping on the bike and things like that, you're not really giving your body enough of a stimulus to say, hey, let's put on some more muscle. Okay, so if that's you, because I speak to so many people who fall into that trap, especially those that got Pelotons through well over the last few years. And while it's good to be doing something, it's better than nothing for sure. But if you want to add more muscle, make sure you got that quality of life and build a better metabolic engine for yourself, then you need to add some muscle. So to wrap things up, strong muscle, strong body, strong future. Okay, that's what I say to my clients. So these myths are easy to believe, especially when you're running a business, you're managing a team, and you're trying to fit in trying to fit in fitness into the chaos that is life. And you maybe go on Instagram, you go on YouTube, and you're hearing all these different things, but you've got to bear in mind that a lot of these influencers, or even just who you're talking to, what is their life like? Have they got the same schedule as me? How much time do they have to train? What are they eating? Because quite often the influencers, they've got all day to train. Okay. They don't have your little snippets of time. They don't have the stress that you've got. So you need to make sure that the exercise you are doing is giving you the most bang for your buck. And I would say strength training is up there for most, especially for guys over 40. Okay. So, pardon me. I hope this helps. And again, if you need any help putting anything together, if you have any questions, pop them down below. But I'll be posting more content like this. I've been away on holiday for the last 6 weeks in France, so hence the little bit of a rest on the video front. But I'm back on it now. And as I mentioned, if you're a business leader who wants personalized help and needs some help getting back on track, perhaps after years of neglecting their health and fitness, then do shoot me a message. I'd love to help you. Okay, that's it for me for now. Enjoy the rest of your day.